Pumpkins, I think this time of year is so interesting for relationships, period. I think we are in such a surplus of spending time with family, with friends. It is a constant social season, and I think there's no other time to think about the boundaries that you might have in your relationships and why it could be so insanely difficult to communicate those, especially as they evolve and they change. I think this has been something that's been on the forefront as I've gotten older because I've realized the way I want my relationships to trend is definitely in a healthier manner, and I think communicating those boundaries is the hardest part of all of that. I first think about well, what is this need for boundaries? Do I have friends that I have zero boundaries with? And the truth is, I am actually not sure. I think there's micro boundaries, macro boundaries. I think it's interesting, and I think about where boundaries start to begin with, and I think it's all for healthy purposes. I think about some of my first times in therapy, and my therapists were saying, how do you create boundaries with your family? How do you create boundaries with your parents? What does that look like? What does that look like to communicate? And I think about the hardest part of boundaries, period, for me, was purely how to communicate them. And how to reassure in that communication process that it was out of love and that I wanted to let them know I was doing this selfishly for my own health. But in order for me to love you better, I needed to be healthier. And really, that's what it goes back to. The reason I titled this dinner episode, Did My Boundaries Hurt You? Is because there is a hard fact that when somebody is so solid and direct and blunt with their truth, it can really hurt. And there's a really gorgeous Hilary Duff song, and the chorus is, you can even be tough, you can even be blunt, just do with love, 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 love. And I thought about that in this episode because this time of year, when you bring families together, I think was the very first for me, was the very first year I felt like my boundaries were instituted in a great way. They were well respected. It was the first year I don't know if I really needed to communicate them, but really if they were heard because of the things I shared last year. And I remember when I was sharing these things last year, specifically with my family, it was a level of, this is the way I feel, this is why I may need to take a step back or put this here, and it's all because I do love you, but I think I am taking advantage of myself and giving way too much of myself here. And I think there was an immediate reaction a little bit. And I think about those reactions on both ends because I've been communicated a boundary by somebody before, and I am a very sensitive individual. When somebody is very honest with me, when they're very blunt, when they're very direct, I can react in an extreme sensitive way immediately. Fuck it up, Nick. I can react immediately in a sensitive way, but I think I eventually get around to this moment where their intention is to show me that they're doing this for their own health, and the reason they're even sharing this with me is because they care. I think about the few times in my life where I've had relationships where I don't know if I really didn't care enough to share the boundary or if I let the boundary build on its own and I didn't really indicate it. I think it was truly because I don't know if I cared enough to communicate that. Which sounds shitty, but also as you evaluate relationships, you realize the blurred lines of, is that something I care or have enough attention towards that I need to communicate it so directly and so purposefully? Or can there be a boundary that just is created a bit naturally between us and I don't have to communicate it? I can let time and I can let space create that boundary for itself. I do believe in that scope of some things are better left unsaid, but this episode's about sharing that and how on the other end somebody can be quite offended or quite hurt because you had to place something in between you and them. That boundary could look like anything. That boundary for me could look like the amount of quality time I spend with you. While I sit there and I say, I do think I need to spend less time with you, it's too frequent, you could absolutely hear it means you don't love me as much. And I need to understand both sides of that, whereas I fully expect you to understand both sides of that as well, or at least try your best to open the lens of, can I see what they're trying to communicate with me? Can I see that they still have love for me, but they're doing this for themselves And I am actually proud of them, and I want to step out of being selfish on my own and thinking that I'm not getting love, and actually realizing that they're vouching for their own love and their own strength, and actually I may need to do the same. I think this time of year is full of boundaries. I think this time of year is also full of communicating those boundaries. I think we can see miscommunication with those boundaries. And I think that I wanted to bring this to dinner, especially this week in between Christmas and Thanksgiving. Especially between Christmas and New Year's, because I think family is around. We are expected to be around our friends a ton. We have tons of free time, and tons of our loved ones are sitting there and being like, why aren't you with me 24/7? I'm confused. Why are you not giving me all this attention? I'm confused. Why are you not entirely jazzed to see me every second I step in this room? And it's truly because maybe you don't have enough energy. You haven't given yourself enough light and time to recoup on your own. And you actually needed to say, in the most honest way, hey, I'm completely free tonight. I've got nothing going on. And I know you have nothing going on either. I love you, but I have no interest in seeing you tonight because I want to be selfish and I just want a fucking night to myself. I have so many friends that hear that and they're like, that just turned me on so much. They're like, the fact that you just told me you are so free and I'm so free and you don't want to fucking see me, that turns me on so much. And the reason I think it turns some people on is because you're being so honest with them that they feel like you are truly sharing your love. You're truly sharing your vulnerability. You have this feeling of, oh my God, they trust me and they feel so connected with me that they have no fear to be this honest with me because they know how I'll react. And I think that's a beautiful place to be. Did my boundaries hurt you? I want you guys to answer that for yourself. Take this into your own relationships, into your own life. Say, has anybody ever shared a boundary with me? Did it hurt me? Why? If I know based on intention that it was healthy for them, why did that boundary hurt me? Were they extracting love from me directly? Maybe. Was it a ton of love? Was it all their love? Maybe it was. Then you can be hurt. I think this is a time to really evaluate the other side of boundaries. We love to be in our own echo chamber of the boundaries I want to create, throwing those out. But when other people have them for you, just remember, we all have them. We're all throwing them up in different places and trying our best to respect everybody's level of boundaries and when they feel the need to put those up. I love you, pumpkins. I think this was a good episode. For me, this was like boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Should I say it again? I love you guys. I have boundaries with you guys even, and I know you know that, but we also have this beautiful threshold of social media, a platform like this, keeping a space between you and I, but allowing this to be a common space that's safe. My privacy is not at risk. Your privacy is not at risk. We can share ideas and feel free with that. I think that's beautiful. Just a small example of the great boundary, but I love you guys. Thank you for watching dinner. I'm so in love with this series. Let me know a couple things. I would love to know. Do you want me to change up my background? Do you want me to wear no clothes? Should I wear more clothes? Should I actually like put a paper bag on my head? I don't know. I want to know. A little survey. Just like give me an idea. If you guys have anything you want me to touch on, I would love to. I am coming up with ideas every week, but some might not be all that jazzed to you, and some might be super jazzed to you. So let me know. Pumpkins, thanks again for joining me. This was dinner. Mwah!